Hey, I'm Carl Hood with Analog Way, and welcome to my office hours. So one of the Aquilon's most powerful features is its auxes. Like I mentioned in another video, those are actually processed outside of the VPU, even though they have scalable, fully functional layers, which is really what makes them incredibly powerful. And sometimes you want to do some pretty beefy things with your auxes, and you might need a lot of layers to support everything you're doing. So let's take a look at using an aux as a record for a big, basically 3x4K LED wall. Let's dive into WebRCS. So when we fire up WebRCS, you can actually see that I've got this big LED wall here built, and we can't really see what the size is, but if we go into pre-config canvas, you'll notice that this screen is actually 11,520 pixels by 2160. So it's 4 UHD signals side by side, edge to edge. Now I can build an auxiliary screen to record this, and we will in a second, but this auxiliary screen basically to handle that kind of a signal needs to be pretty well equipped. So let's take a look at how we're going to do that. Let's go to outputs, and we're going to use output 9 for our record. So let's call it record main, and we're going to want to make this an aux. We don't want to use any VPU processing for this. This is sort of a non-audience facing screen, so we're going to go ahead and make this an aux. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, 2 layers is not going to be enough to support this. Why? Because when you're putting a screen on an aux, like we're about to do, you need to make sure that the aux has the same number of layers as the total capacity of said screen. Now, the screen's capacity is actually calculated by adding all of its outputs capacities. It actually says it right here. It says if the source is a multi-output screen, its equivalent capacity is the sum of its output capacities. Now, if we go back to Canvas real quick and take a look at our LED wall, we'll see that we have one capacity to output, another, and then a third. So we're actually looking at a capacity of 6 for the whole screen. What this means is that for the aux, we're going to want 6 layers. So we're going to set this to 6. Now, you'll notice right out the gate that these other layers are actually borrowed from outputs 10 and outputs 11. So like I mentioned before, aux layers don't live in the VPU. Aux layers live a little more in line with the outputs, and so if you want a big aux, you actually kind of have to borrow those layers from other outputs. Now, there is an upside to doing this, which is these outputs are not actually completely gone, right? What I can do is I can actually set output 9 to duplicate itself on output 10. So if I click on output 10 over here and say allow duplication, now the Aquilon has this pure carbon copy of output 9 on output 10. It's like a built-in DA. And I can actually make this my record backup, because output 9 and 10 are still 2 different cables. They could still be 2 different feeds going to 2 totally different recorders, but they will be in lockstep, perfect sync, and the exact same thing at the same time. So I'm saving myself a little bit of grief here by being able to sort of benefit from this aux duplication feature. Another thing you may have noticed is that aux duplication really only works when you're borrowing layers from another output. So in this case, output 9 can duplicate on outputs 10 and 11 because it's borrowing their aux layers, but it can't on output 12 because it hasn't touched output 12. In fact, I can do whatever I want with output 12. I can make it its own aux, I can make it its own screen output. It is completely independent at this point, and it can do whatever it wants. Now, output 9 and 10, these I can make whatever size I want. So I could still make my record UHD for my main record. My backup record, I could also make it UHD, or I could leave it at 1080, or really whatever I want. Heck, if I want to, I could even put a custom format on one of these outputs. So now we've actually set up this record. Let's go ahead and put that aux on a screen. So we're going to go to aux 1, add output 9, which is our main record output. I can call this one records or record main. There we go. And now to actually set my record up so that it properly has the right source, I'm going to go to the live page over here. Now when I click on this live page, I now have my aux, my main record. Now of course it's 16:9. The screen we're going to put on there is not 16:9, but don't worry, the aux layers will properly scale this down to the size of our aux, which in this case, this is UHD. So in our source panel on the left, screens is an option here, and I can go find screen 4 program, right? So this is the main live signal of screen 4. Now if I drop it on layer 1, what's going to happen is layer 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 are all going to contribute to processing this big screen. But this is incredible, right? Because this screen is a huge screen, and I have the ability to scale it, pip it, I can window it, I can do basically whatever I want on this aux, because the aux layers allow me to do so. Now in this case for the record, let's just say we want it full screen. And let's just say that for the sake of not messing this up during my metaphorical show here, I also want this to be on program, obviously sending all the time. So I'm going to unlock my aux real quick, do the same thing. Now, once I full screen my layer, I can lock my aux back up, I can lock it up in preview, and now it's effectively impossible to mess this up because I have both program and preview locked, so I can't move, change, or really affect these layers in any way. And this is copied, the source, the LED, on both program and preview. So even if I were to accidentally take my record, nothing would actually change on the outgoing signal. So the only thing left really is if I want to, I can hide this screen entirely because I know that it has been fully set. I can forget it and focus on the main screen here. So that's how to build a pretty beefy 6-layer aux with the Aquilon. Like I said earlier, auxes are super powerful. They're, in my opinion, one of the best features of the Aquilon, so do not sleep on these. We just saw this example of how it can make an amazing record, but auxes really, they can do whatever you want them to do because they're so flexible and because they live outside of the VPU, so they don't rob any of your resources that you would use otherwise for your main screens. Be sure to check out my other office hours videos for more tips and tricks. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.